On Memorial Day weekend in 1984, someone placed a body in a cardboard box and slid it down an embankment. The cause of death was homicide, but investigators had no idea when the murder occurred. But science uncovered an important detail of the victim's last night alive. Would it be enough to identify the killer? On a Sunday morning, a fisherman enjoying the Juniata River in central Pennsylvania saw a large cardboard box at the river's edge. Inside was a garbage bag.
He pulled back a piece of plastic a little bit and discovered that it was the part of a person. Didn't know male, female.
The torso was later identified as female. The rest was a mystery.
There was no indicator as to how she met her death.
Above the box on the side of a hill, the underbrush had been tamped down, indicating the box had slid down the embankment from the road above.
The box had been slid down after the dew had settled and had been wiped off by the passage of the box. And that was important to developing a timeline in this case.
Investigators noticed a grease-stained puncture hole in the box, and in the grease were small pieces of styrofoam.
Whoever pulled that out of the trunk, when they were lifting it out, caught the box on the latch. That's what I believed it was from.
Someone had gone to great lengths to conceal the victim's identity by removing the head, arms, and legs. To do this, the killer needed time and privacy.
The part that didn't make sense to me about that was if someone could make a person's head, arms, and legs disappear from that day until this day, they could easily make the rest of the body disappear. So there was some reason for the body to be discovered.
The body had 3 large moles and a scar on the abdomen. Blue jeans and a belt with a zodiac buckle were the only other keys to the victim's identity. At the autopsy, the pathologist found evidence of insect activity, which was sent to a forensic entomologist for analysis. An entomologist is an expert in the study of insects. He identified the eggs as those of the bluebottle fly and the black blowfly, both common in many areas of the United States. The weather conditions around the time the body was discovered and the stage of the egg and larvae development allowed the entomologist to provide a rough estimate of the time of death.
It was roughly 2 days prior to our finding the torso.
This meant that the victim died sometime late Friday night or early Saturday morning. The autopsy was not able to identify the cause of death. The pathologist found semen present during the autopsy, but there was no evidence of rape. And there was no way to identify the man since this was before DNA testing. Police knew that in order to identify possible suspects, they first had to identify the victim.
We said from the very beginning, if we find out who she is, we'll find out who killed her.
Missing persons reports were checked, but no one fit the description of the torso. 7 months later, she was buried, still unidentified, in an unmarked grave, and soon forgotten. 1 year later, A telephone call changed that. One year after Jane Doe, the unidentified murder victim was buried in a pauper's grave in Pennsylvania, police received what at first was a routine telephone call. A woman told police that her ex-sister-in-law, Edna Posey, had been missing for a year. She was able to provide police with a detailed physical description.
She started explaining how Edna would say, "Oh, I can't wear a bikini because of my moles."
This sounded strikingly similar to the birthmarks found on the body, their Jane Doe of a year earlier. The caller also said Edna Posey always wore a belt with a zodiac buckle. Edna Posey was a 31-year-old single mother of an 11-year-old boy, Randy. And she was no stranger to the seedy side of life in the nearby city of Harrisburg.
She would generally be perceived as a tramp. Unstable relationships, short-term, problems with alcohol, and not having a stable home environment for Randy, among other things.
Edna was not your, I shouldn't say nicest person, but was sort of wild.
Edna's wild streak usually involved men and alcohol. She would meet men in bars, quickly move in with them, and just as quickly move out, only to repeat the same pattern again and again. And she would sometimes disappear for months at a time without saying a word to anyone. Edna was able to admit that her life was out of control and had asked Donald Ruby, her son Randy's Boy Scout leader, if Randy could move in with him.
Donald Ruby had a Boy Scout troop that was comprised largely of boys who had problems in their lives. Most of them were in families with mothers only. The boys had been into trouble, and Donald took this group of boys and formed his own troop with it.
Randy moved in with Donald Ruby and his wife and lived with them as if he were their own son. 42-year-old Ruby worked as a machinist and had no children of his own. While many applauded him for his efforts with troubled youngsters, some questioned his motives.
Well, it's in the eye of the beholder. He did some things that I would have winced at myself, such as the kissing on the lips and so forth. I was never that way, even with my own children.
Edna moved 150 miles away to Virginia, where she took a job as a dental technician while trying to get her life back on track. This is Edna's co-worker, who asked not to be identified for fear of her safety.
She was saving her money, and sometimes in that particular time period, she met a young soldier in the Army band in Virginia. And they became quite close, and was going to move in together and bring Randy down to be with them.
And police believe that Donald Ruby was threatened by the loss of Randy.
The evidence was that she intended to take Randy back with her. We believed and argued that Donald did not want to give up Randy as his son.
Did this mean that Donald Ruby had a motive to kill Edna Posey? Ruby told police that Edna Posey had come to their home to visit Randy on Friday night and planned to stay for the entire Memorial Day weekend.
No, I'm from Virginia.
Ah.
The next day, Ruby and his wife said they took Edna shopping and dropped her off downtown.
Yeah, actually, just go to the corner.
We'll see you back here like 5:30, right?
Okay, great, thanks.
Bye.
When they returned later to pick her up, Edna never showed up.
Given the lifestyle that Edna lived for decades, you could sell it very easily that she just decided to disappear off the face of the earth.
But Edna's son Randy told police a slightly different story.
Hey, buddy. Hey, Mom. Hey.
He said he last saw his mother on Friday night when she kissed him goodnight.
I love you. Okay, see you tomorrow.
A short time later, he said he heard a loud noise coming from the bedroom where his mother was sleeping.
I think he described it as if somebody fallen out of bed.
He said when he woke up the next day, his mother was gone. If the forensic entomologist was correct in his estimate of the time of Edna's death, the noise Randy heard on Friday night may have been his mother's murder. When police searched Donald Ruby's trunk, they found the same type of grease that was found on the box holding Edna Posey's torso. And they discovered the hole in the box was the same size and shape as the trunk latch in Ruby's car. Prosecutors now believed that Donald Ruby murdered Edna Posey on Friday evening. When Donald Ruby was charged with the murder of Edna Posey, police heard some unsettling news about his life with Edna's son, Randy.
We had testimony that when they would come home from camping trips, he would physically touch Randy's private parts, allegedly to feel for ticks. So yes, there was some direct evidence of pedophilia.
He was looking for ticks, but he would examine around the crotch and the rear end a little bit more than a parent probably would explore.
Prosecutors said that was evidence of pedophilia, that Ruby had a sexual fixation with Randy and killed Edna to keep her from regaining custody of her son. They said that the grease and styrofoam evidence on the box containing Edna's body, though circumstantial, tied Ruby to the crime. 3 years after Edna Posey's disappearance, Donald Ruby was convicted of her murder and sentenced to life in prison. Edna's family and friends believed that a cold-blooded killer had gotten justice.
How could you do this? How could you do this to another person? I mean, it wasn't like he just shot her and, you know, there was no pain and she just died. It was the cruel, cruel way that he killed her. And it was just almost unbelievable to me that you could do that to another human being.
From behind bars, Donald Ruby maintained his innocence. He said Edna had countless low-life lovers and any one of them could have committed the crime. His lawyers petitioned the court for a retrial. They claimed there was no proof Donald Ruby was a pedophile and that his rights were violated when jurors heard that testimony. Ruby's defense attorneys also decided to have the forensic evidence re-examined. So they called Dr. Neil Haskell, one of the country's premier forensic entomologists. Dr. Haskell analyzed the eggs and larvae from Edna Posey's body. Flies lay eggs, which develop into larvae and then into flies. But in reading the medical examiner's report, Dr. Haskell noticed an inconsistency. At the autopsy, the medical examiner said he found eggs, but not larvae. And he noticed something else. At the original autopsy, the eggs were scraped from the body and placed in a petri dish. The scrapings also contained bits of flesh and blood. This meant that the eggs had 3 additional days to feed on the flesh and develop before they were analyzed.
I'm trying to avoid saying the copper's screwed up. I'm trying to be professional and diplomatic.
Dr. Haskell analyzed some of the eggs found on Edna Posey's body. After 3 years, they were so dry, they were almost dust. They were then placed in a saline solution to rehydrate them. Dr. Haskell believes these eggs were on Edna Posey's body for only a short time, meaning that Edna Posey was killed sometime late Saturday night or early Sunday morning, not Friday night, as the original entomologist estimated.
Scientific entomological evidence that was presented in this case clearly showed that the time when the death of this individual had taken place had to be much shorter than what the prosecution was alleging.
The meteorological evidence also pointed to early Sunday morning. When the fisherman found the body on Sunday morning, he said there was no dew or condensation along the path the box traveled down the embankment. And another factor supporting this time frame was the autopsy report. The medical examiner said there was motile or moving sperm in Edna's body at the autopsy. Sperm remains motile in a deceased person for only 24 hours after death. Donald Ruby had an alibi for all day Saturday and Saturday night. After 6 years in prison, Donald Ruby was granted a new trial. And Ruby's new defense team had a surprise piece of evidence. New DNA testing of the semen found during Edna Posey's autopsy uncovered a tantalizing clue about her last night alive. Eight years after Edna Posey's death, forensic scientists analyzed the semen recovered during her autopsy. This time, using new DNA technology which wasn't available at Donald Ruby's first trial. In a shocking development, DNA testing revealed there was semen from 3 different men. And Donald Ruby's DNA was not among them. The autopsy notes revealed that the semen contained motile sperm at the time of the autopsy. Sperm remain motile in a dead person for only 24 hours.
We had at least 3 people, by the evidence, who were with her and had sex with her less than 24 hours before her body was discovered.
We were able to exploit that in the trial by planting the suggestion that Edna, true to form, had gotten on the wild side when she was dropped off in Middletown by Don.
At Donald Ruby's second trial, his defense was the same as the first trial, that he and his wife dropped Edna off on Saturday morning to go shopping. But this time, new forensic evidence helped bolster his story. His attorneys implied that one or more of the unidentified men who had sex with her on Saturday night may have been the killer.
Oh, that was clearly the defense insinuation. The defense clearly insinuated that somebody that Edna was picked up by might have committed this murder.
The other new piece of forensic evidence was Dr. Haskell's testimony, with his view that the original time of death was inaccurate. He testified that improper preservation of the entomological evidence caused an inaccurate estimation of the time of death. He told the jury that Edna Posey died late Saturday night or early Sunday morning, not on Friday night as originally claimed. Further helping Ruby's case was Edna's son, Randy. At the original trial, Randy said he heard a loud thump from his mother's bedroom late on Friday night. But 8 years later, Randy, now 21 years old, recalled nothing about that.
Randy clearly did not remember hearing a thump. We asked him about it. He said he had no independent recollection of it, and thus we did not have the thump in the night to use as testimony.
The defense also claimed that the hole in the carton carrying Edna's body could have been made by thousands of vehicles with the same type of hood latch and grease as was in Ruby's car. After a 9-day trial, and 6 hours of deliberation, the jury found Donald Ruby not guilty, a verdict which baffled Edna's friends and family.
Just a total state of shock. They could not believe this. They'd proven a case, and then to have it thrown out like that, and a murderer walking the streets. And I think it was a concern to a lot of people in the area, especially people who had testified against him.
Just some ducks along the highway that, like I said, you learn to appreciate things better when you lose them, when you don't have them for a while.
You learn through experience, never try to figure out a jury. Never try to figure out a jury. And I don't know what the jury thought, but they made their decision, and I'll live with it.
And the case, while officially closed, remains open in the minds of those involved.
Who should be scared of Mr. Ruby? Virtually anyone with children. I don't propose to be an expert in pedophilia, but certainly it'd be my lay opinion that a leopard doesn't change its spots.
I'm convinced that Don did not kill Edna. He might have had reason to, but he did not do it. Who did kill her, I have no clue. I just don't, I know it's not Don.
Donald Ruby left town soon after the trial, and no one, not even his own lawyers, know where he is today.
I have had a letter that he sent me later that year. It basically thanked me for testifying on his behalf, and that he was going to have a certain place in his heart for the welfare of the flies in the future.